All right, good morning. This is Jeff Warrock here at the National Weather Service in Wakefield. I'm going to talk about the weather here for this week starting May 11th and a little bit into the weekend. We do have a bit of weather out there this morning, so we'll kind of go ahead in here and kind of talk about what's happening right now. Just kind of pulling up the weather maps here. What you're seeing here, the black numbers are actually the current temperatures. So you can see temperatures really only in the 40s to maybe low 50s for a lot of the area. And then you have some mid 50s and 60s as you push further south and east. But the bottom line is you see a lot of these wind barbs coming out of the north. So north winds really everywhere. The cold front's pushed all the way down into South Carolina, and the red numbers you see there are wind gusts. So a little bit of a breeze here with the front as some of the cooler air is surging in. You see 22-mile-an-hour winds there in Richmond, and on the bay, places close to the water, we're seeing more wind gusts of 25, even up to 35 miles an hour, as some of that cooler air coming in. So the cold fronts here going to continue to be cloudy, a little bit rainy for the rest of the day. Temperatures probably aren't going to go much, they'll go warm a little bit, but not too much. Again, because that cold front has just pushed, so far to the south. Looking at the satellite and radar this morning, you can kind of see how big the system is. And the radar here is a composite reflectivity, and it's a little bit overdone. I'll show you the local radar here in a second. But bottom line is you can see how this precipitation extends all the way back into parts of eastern Kentucky, and the clouds, really covering the entire area. So today, just a nice, cool, kind of cloudy day with some rain around the area. Some people are going to get a little bit of rain. Some folks not so much. So we'll kind of talk about that here in a minute. As far as the rainfall that's fallen this morning, it's kind of been nice in some areas. Up here over the Maryland Eastern Shore, maybe 2/10 of an inch, but you see a half-inch report here, not too far from Tappahannock. And you're seeing a quarter of an inch of rain that's fallen, places around Richmond here and there, even out towards parts of the Piedmont here towards Louisa. They've gotten about a quarter of an inch. So there's been some decent rainfall getting down here towards Nottoway County, out towards Charlotte Courthouse, showing about a quarter to 3/10 of an inch. So some areas are getting some decent rain this morning, but once you get south and east of Petersburg, you don't see any readings down here across southeast Virginia. Really no precipitation readings on the eastern shore, and of course, really none down here in North Carolina. So you can kind of see the area where the rainfall's been here this morning, kind of where it's been locked in. And if I actually pull down like our local radar, you can kind of see what's going on here. So I have a loop of this going, and so it's not really pushing southeast much. It's just you have this rain that's kind of moving behind the front. And it's kind of locked in here a little bit across parts of Richmond and a little bit getting into parts of the eastern shore, the northern neck. You kind of do notice it's maybe starting to shrink a little bit, and it's not really making any progression to the southeast. So it's going to be a while before it starts to move southeast. So some folks, here across central Virginia and parts of maybe the middle peninsula and northern neck, going to continue to see some light rain here off and on for a little while, and it'll eventually start to push southeast as the day goes on. So this is kind of the model simulated reflectivity here. And so it's doing a decent job showing the rainfall kind of sitting here across parts of central Virginia, basically Petersburg, and out through the peninsulas north. And as you go through in time here, it doesn't really move much. This is 1 o'clock this afternoon, still some light rain, maybe an occasional moderate shower in there, but it doesn't move. 2 o'clock this afternoon, still kind of there. And eventually it starts to move southeast, let's say around 3 o'clock this afternoon. And so starting to push southeast a little bit here, but what you'll notice is as it pushes southeast, it kind of falls apart. And kind of starting to get towards the coast here by about 5, 6 o'clock. So we're not going to see nearly as much rainfall, in the southeastern parts of Virginia and northeast North Carolina as what we're going to see here over parts of central Virginia, and I'd say the upper parts of the eastern shore here. So nice that some areas are getting some rain today. We'll see some, amounts of maybe up to a half inch, in some areas, but it's not going to be a widespread half inch. And a lot of the areas, where it's not currently raining, a lot of the areas south and east of there just aren't going to get much today. It just falls apart as it pushes to the coast. And you notice here, it's all well offshore by this evening. So maybe around 5 to 6 o'clock, after 3 o'clock, pushes across southeast Virginia and in northeast North Carolina. So that's what's going on right now. I'm going ahead and taking a look here at the fronts and kind of the weather pattern for the week. Obviously for today, this cold front's already pushed way down to the Carolinas. We just have this moisture that's kind of riding up and behind the front. And so that's why that rain's kind of locked in over part of the area here for today. And you get into, let's say, let's jump ahead to this evening. Things do dry out. That front stalls out down there across South Carolina, and high pressure starts to build in. So by tomorrow, yeah, we have high pressure in place. Going to be a lot sunnier. Temperatures are actually going to moderate. I mean, we'll still be in the 70s tomorrow, despite the cold front, being to our south and the high pressure coming in from the north. We're still going to be, seasonable. We're still going to be in the 70s for tomorrow. Jumping ahead to Wednesday, that's when you start to see the high pressure now pushing way offshore, and the next cold front is starting to make its way down across the Ohio River Valley. And with that, there's going to be some moisture that comes up ahead of the front. And so you're going to start to see increasing chances of precipitation for our area. I'd say sometime Wednesday. The timing is still a little bit, up in the air. Some models have it coming through a little bit earlier on Wednesday, some more like Wednesday afternoon and evening. I think we're tending more towards Wednesday afternoon and evening right now. But there's another system coming through midweek that's going to bring us another shot of precipitation sometime Wednesday into Wednesday night. And so that's Wednesday. By Thursday morning, though, you see this thing is the front's kind of starting to get towards the coast. A little area low pressure forming along it. Could be some lingering showers there Thursday morning. And then by Friday, it's well offshore. The front's kind of pushed out. Friday should be another, mostly sunny day. And then by the time you get into Saturday, you'll kind of start to notice the pattern changing a little bit here, where now we have high pressure across the southeast U.S. that's anchored off the coast. And you're going to see that's going to usher in some pretty warm temperatures, almost like the Bermuda high kicking in. And so things are going to take a turn towards the end of this week to much warmer temperatures, much drier conditions, and much warmer temperatures. So, a couple for cold fronts early this week, making things seasonable, a couple chances of rain. And then by the weekend, things change pretty significantly with Bermuda high kicking in, and that even persists into Sunday. So things are going to warm up quite a bit. And be pretty dry for the upcoming weekend. So there's no risk of severe weather today or tomorrow. With Wednesday, with that front starting to come through, we could see a rumble of thunder here. So, that's why we have basically in that what they call general thunder, the light green. There is a risk. There's a level 1 risk of maybe a strong storm over the mountains, but nothing here for our neck of the woods for Wednesday. Just maybe a rumble of thunder here or there with that front. As far as rainfall, looking at what we're looking at rainfall totals, some places actually have seen a ½ inch, which is good. This is a 3-day total here that you're seeing on the left-hand image here. And so, some places over the course of the next, between now, the rainfall today and the rainfall that we see on, let's say, Wednesday night, there may be some places, from Richmond up towards Tappahannock, maybe back towards Farmville, maybe we do get close to an inch of rain total. In some areas, but a lot of folks, I don't think we're going to get that inch of rain. I think a lot of areas are going to be a little bit less between the rainfall today and the rainfall on Wednesday, but we could see a few spots that do kind of maybe get close to an inch. Kind of looking at the timing of the precipitation here, obviously today things really start to decrease by the time you get to 6 o'clock. Maybe a few places near the coast still have some good chances of rain, but by this evening the rainfall is pretty much over. Even for the coast, it's pushed offshore. The next event, that's what we're going to be watching the timing on, but right now we have it Wednesday afternoon, starting to push into some areas here, by about 3 p.m. or so, and then really looking at more widespread rain, maybe between 6 and I'd say 6 to midnight there on Wednesday. And it does linger a little bit in here to Wednesday morning. See, we still have some pretty good chances of rain here Wednesday morning, but then by 9 a.m. we have those rain chances right now really starting to decrease. So a little bit of a shot of rain today, get a pretty good break there on Tuesday, and then later on Wednesday is really going to be our next chance of rain. Now, as far as the probabilities go, I thought I had the probabilities up here, but they may have disappeared on me. The probability of seeing, I'd say, a ½ inch of rain, widespread across central Virginia. I lost the image, so I'll just talk to it. There's a decent probability, obviously. I'd say about, 50 to 70% probability that you're going to see a good ½ inch of rain in some areas between these two systems across central Virginia, but much less probability across southeast Virginia. And the probability of seeing an inch of rain is really only about 20 to 25%. And that's even across central Virginia. So the areas where you see a 1 inch of rain, the range there being forecast, the probability of getting that much rain up to an inch is really only around probably about 20% or so. And so it kind of falls off. So a good ½ inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch in some areas this week, and that should be about it. Oh, there it is right here. Here's the probability. Sorry, I just talked to it and had the image in there. I was looking for it. I actually put it in the briefing. Yeah. So the image here on the left is the half-inch of rainfall probability, and doing a good job locking in on where the rainfall is now and where we're actually going to see a little bit better probability of some more rain later on this week. But even here in Southeast Virginia, Northeast North Carolina, you still have about a 40% probability of a half inch, and that's mainly with that next system. So that next system here, Wednesday night into Thursday, hopefully we can get a little more rain across Southeast Virginia, Northeast North Carolina with that system. But it looks like most of the rain is going to stay just to our north, the better probabilities. And on the right here is the probabilities of 3/4 of an inch of rain, not quite an inch, but 3/4. And so, 25% probability in Richmond, about almost 30% up here in Salisbury, and about a 20% down here in Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Elizabeth City. And again, for the folks in Southeast Virginia, Northeast North Carolina, those probabilities are really with the late rain later this week, where the probabilities across Central Virginia and I'd say north in Maryland, that's really with this system combined with the next system that's going to be coming through. And so you kind of see that here on the left-hand side here, basically the rainfall forecast through Wednesday, kind of on average. And then once we get past that, not much of rainfall, talking about Wednesday night to Sunday. Really, the only chance of rain is really going to be Wednesday night, and that's why you're seeing some rainfall accumulations here over Northeast North Carolina and Eastern Virginia. That's because that front's going to be pushing through. That rainfall is going to be pushing through there, Wednesday evening. And then after that, it gets dry. The rainfall cuts off and things get dry after that. So most of the rain we're going to see is going to be now, today, and again later on Wednesday and Wednesday night. And then after that, things dry out. A little bit breezy. I kind of wanted to throw this in here because we do have a couple rounds here where it's going to be somewhat breezy conditions. Obviously today, behind that front, wind gusts maybe 20, 25 miles per hour. We do have some pretty good winds down here across North Carolina, across Corolla, the Outer Banks, maybe a northeast wind kind of gusting up to 35 down there. So we are expecting a little more wind Virginia Beach south than what we have, I'd say, inland. And it's with that northeast wind kind of coming down into parts of the bay, lower bay, and parts of the coast. Winds decrease here on Tuesday as the high pressure builds in. You're not seeing a whole lot of wind, but then basically Wednesday afternoon, as that high pressure moves offshore, you see those south winds start to increase again. So a lot of us going to be gusting again about 20, 25 miles per hour on Wednesday, but this time now it's a south wind instead of a north wind. So a little bit breezy there, and that's ahead of that cold front coming through Wednesday night. And not a whole lot of wind with that front on Thursday. We might see a little bit of wind, Thursday evening, but really most of the wind should be ahead of that next front. That next front on Thursday is not a really super strong front. It's a decent front, bring us a chance of rain, but it's not a really, really strong front. It's not going to bring in very cold temperatures. So speaking of that, you can kind of see today those high temperatures here, fairly chilly or fairly cool for this time of year behind that front. But then when the front comes through Wednesday, you notice Thursday's temperature is still in the 70s. So it's not a really strong cold front. It's not like it's bringing a big cold punch down here. It's just dropping temperatures a little bit and bringing us a chance of rain. What you really notice, though, is when that high pressure kicks in, that's offshore, that Bermuda high kicks in, you really notice Saturday and Sunday, those temperatures starting to shoot up. So we'll see how warm we get, but it looks like we're going to be well into the 80s, maybe even some 90-degree temperatures, right around 90, starting to come in by Sunday. So some summer type heat may be coming for the weekend, but cool today. I'd say seasonable for most of the week, and then really starting to warm up basically as you get into Saturday and Sunday. So, you're looking forward to summer, you can look forward to the weekend. We'll be updating the drought a little bit later today. They have a conference call today, so tomorrow we'll be looking at the drought. There could be a chance that some of the extreme drought might start to extend a little bit. Even though we're getting a little bit of rain, there's pretty good rainfall deficits here, in areas across the Piedmont, especially Richmond North and across the peninsula. So we're looking at how much rainfall is falling today, trying to assess what we'll get with the next round of rain later this week. And we'll see if the extreme drought conditions expand. The good news is this is the 30-day percent of normal rainfall. And so we did see some improvement in the last 30 days, basically with the last rainfall event we had. So really, I'd say areas from like the lower peninsula, down into, out back towards Wakefield and south and east. We had a little bit better rainfall down in this region here. That was last week. You can really see it here across parts of North Carolina where It's trying to suggest it's almost near normal rainfall, but just one little spot. But on average, we're still running, fairly dry. Things dried up pretty quickly after that rainfall event. Richmond kind of held status quo because they had a little bit of rain this last event, but it's still been pretty dry. Dry conditions are really starting to get worse, over parts of the Middle Peninsula, Northern Neck. It really expanded here across Maryland. So, this rainfall is beneficial. It's kind of a drop in the bucket because our departure from normal is so high. So we'll just see how this goes with these rainfall events. They're not going to end the drought. It's just a matter of, does the extreme drought start to extend a little bit, more up towards Richmond? And we're really concerned about some of the peninsulas up here and getting up in the Maryland Eastern Shore with these rainfall deficits. So looking ahead, I kind of already alluded to it. The weekend's going to be getting much above normal temperatures, and honestly, looking out beyond that, it looks like things may stay in that warm pattern. So there's a really high confidence that looking at from May 18th to the 24th, this 8 to 14 day outlook, there's pretty high confidence that it's going to get warm and it's going to stay warm. We may get a day here or there where the temperature drops, but on average, there's a pretty good signal that we're going to be pretty warm here. Going all the way out, to almost the end of this month, from the 18th to the 24th. Rainfall wise, they really just have us at equal chances with that Bermuda high and stuff kind of kicking in. The series of fronts that are coming through now, we'll kind of start to see a slowdown in that a little bit. So not going to be a lot of triggers for precipitation. So they kind of have us at near normal precipitation, maybe in the western part of the state, a slight probability that it could be above normal. I wouldn't hang my hat on that. So there's just not a good signal here for precipitation. And honestly, we need above normal precipitation right now, and we need a lot of it to try to get us out of this water deficit. So this isn't going to do it. And so really, I'd say for the towards the end of this month, the drought conditions may continue to worsen because we're just not getting enough rain to really make much of a difference. Just kind of a reminder about this heat webinar coming up May 18th. We're doing a lot, looking at a lot of the heat stuff. We're actually going to be trying to message a lot more heat this year, especially once the heat index gets, right around 100 plus, working with the health department. So there's a webinar on that coming up that might be worth jumping in on. So I'm going to shift gears and go right into the marine really quick. We've kind of alluded to some of this. Obviously, small craft advisory conditions everywhere today. And even you see some of this red kind of alluding to the fact that we might be getting close to some gale conditions and high seas once you get well offshore, once you get kind of way off of Virginia Beach, or if you're going southeast. This is where the winds could even be a little bit stronger, getting close to about 35 knots. Tuesday, not as much wind. Some of this is actually showing the wind for Tuesday for Tuesday morning, but the winds do decrease. Ahead of that next front, we talked about those south winds really starting to increase again. So a lot of orange on the map. So small craft advisory conditions really expected everywhere for Wednesday. And then once that front blows through and high pressure starts to build in, things look quite a bit better for Thursday and Friday. You're not seeing really any oranges or reds on the map. So just kind of looking at it, location by location, inshore, near shore, you got the winds today out of the northeast, with small craft advisory conditions. The winds decrease some tomorrow, maybe around 10 to 15 knots out of the north. Then the winds go south on Wednesday, and you see those winds kind of starting to crank back up to about 20 to 25 knots, maybe even close to 30 knots, gust in some areas, but good small craft advisory conditions. Offshore, much the same, really good winds today. Maybe getting up to close to almost a little more than 30 knots, maybe 33 knots or so down here over the North Carolina waters, getting out towards the canyons. I'm going to see a little bit more wind there out of the northeast. Conditions improve there, obviously, again for Tuesday, but then Wednesday, those south winds pick up again in the afternoon and into the evening, kicking those waves back up again there for Wednesday. But then you notice Thursday, things really do improve. In fact, I'll go to here. Thursday, you see much less wind, still kind of that northwest wind there, but you see much less wind Thursday. A little bit of wind on Friday, but still sub-small craft advisory conditions. And with that Bermuda high kicking in over the weekend, just a good old southwest wind, probably around anywhere from, I'd say, 5 to 15 knots, depending on where you are. So the wind is really today and again on Wednesday. That's when we're going to see our breeziest conditions. And, of course, with the wave heights, you expect the same thing with the waves today, about 4 feet on the bay, about 5 to 7 feet or so in the coastal waters. Conditions improve, by the time you get into tomorrow. with the waves built a little bit here on Wednesday with that southerly surge. Same thing on the offshore waters. Got the waves today, basically running about 5 to 8 feet, depending on where you are. Get a little bit of a break in the waves as the winds decrease here a little bit, and then the waves kick back up as you get into that south wind there on Wednesday. And again, just kind of looking at the maps day by day. Today, looking at maybe up to 9 to 10 feet offshore. On average, you're going to see about 5 to 7 offshore with about maybe 3 to 4 in the bay. And then you get into tomorrow, conditions improve a little bit. Basically 2 to 3 feet near shore. You're still holding on to 4 to 5 offshore, occasionally 6 feet. And you'll see those waves kind of kick back up again with that south wind increasing here on Wednesday. So about 3 feet or so in the bay with that southerly flow, 2 to 3 feet. And then near shore about 4 feet, but then getting up to about a good 5 feet offshore. And occasionally could be 6 or 7, depending on how far out you're going offshore with that southerly flow there on Wednesday. And with that kind of wraps up our briefing. I'll go ahead and stop the recording.